We are like a drop of rain in an ocean, like a drop in the sea. Yet many, many nations still got to learn from we, how we aspire and we achieve. It's so hard to believe unity that is so unique. It's fantastic, yes, so to speak. It's fantastic, yes it is, the way how we live as one. In integration, our little nation is second to none. Yeah, the black man, the white man, the Chinese, the Indian, we walk together in hand. In this wonderland of Calypso, in this wonderland of Stewpan, where I was born. God bless our nation.
Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Ms. Marcia Anisette. Ms. Anisette is the Associate Professor of Accounting, Program Director, Master of Accounting, Executive Director of the Student Services of International Relations of York University, the Schulich School of Business. Please join us in welcoming Ms. Anisette.
Thank you, and I guess to all my compatriots, I say happy 54th anniversary. I'm still sort of reeling in a festive mood after that Trini to the bone. So excuse me if I'm a bit informal. When I was asked by the Acting Consul General to deliver this keynote address, she asked me to focus my speech on the way in which citizens of Trinidad and Tobago could give back. As was mentioned, I am an accounting academic. I teach at the Schulich School of Business. And as one of the 3 associate deans there, I am part of the senior administrative team of the school. So I was somewhat daunted by the request because it's really outside of my comfort zone. My 2 comfort zones, one being accounting academia, the other being university administration. After thinking about it for a couple of days, and this is sort of self-motivating myself, I sort of convinced myself that I may be indeed fitting to give this talk, and for 2 reasons. One is that I think I'm like everyone here in the audience today. That is, even though I live in Canada and have made Canada my home, I am passionate about Trinidad and Tobago. As the songstress says, I'm Trini to the bone. But the second reason why I sort of felt emboldened to give this talk is having stumbled across a quote by noted sociologist Susan Eckstein that really resonated with me, and I will repeat parts of the quote for you. It says, "Through transnational engagement, even the most humble of immigrants may transform the communities and countries they left behind. Their impact may be unintended and far greater than they realize. Their impacts may be political, social, economic, even where their main impetus for migrating is economic." As I said, this quote resonated with me because it suggested that even through my sort of minor in the scheme of things, individual efforts of giving back home, and some of which are just born out of sheer nostalgia, even through those minor efforts, it suggested to me that I could make a difference. So in summary, my relevant credentials are less to do with my daily work and more to do with who I am, which is a humble Trinidadian immigrant to Canada who is passionate about her native country and who is keen to know how diasporic communities like ourselves here in the GTA can contribute to the long-term development of Trinidad and Tobago. As I said before, I was really sort of fascinated by Eckstein's notion of transnational engagement. And when we talk about, or when she speaks about transnational engagement, it's really about the ability of migrants to create social fields linking their country of origin with the country of settlement. And my interest in transnational engagement is really to what extent or how can we make transnational engagement economically impactful. I want to share two case studies that really fascinated me. The first is India. It is now really hard to believe that as recent as the 1990s, India was not considered by the international business community a place to invest. It had what was considered a reputation of an inhospitable work and investment climate and an unimpressive workforce. Rajiv Gandhi, the Prime Minister of India in the 1980s, opened up India to the IT industry. He tried to create an atmosphere for foreign investment. And successive governments after him embarked on a number of initiatives to encourage foreign investment. And wait till the 90s, that still did not happen. The international business community was not impressed with India. Today, less than 2 decades later than the 90s, India is a global, in fact, the global powerhouse for the IT industry, raking in something like $150 billion in revenue, which constitutes 55% of the global IT industry, employing 13.3 million people, 3.5 million of which directly and another 10 million indirectly through multiplier effects. So how did this India economic miracle happen? It happened through the driving force, the agency of Indian IT and engineer specialists working in California, Silicon Valley. They were the ones who pioneered using their professional networks. They pioneered the multinational investment subsidiaries back to India. They risked their reputations. They led the multinational investment in India. Some of them returned home repatriating their skills, knowledge, expertise, and capital and built up a homegrown cluster of entrepreneurs in India, which kind of did the reverse, having established a local entrepreneur cluster of entrepreneurs, IT entrepreneurs. They then established outposts back in the US to access markets, technologies, and people, thereby creating that, as I said, that transnational link between India and the US, a symbiotic relationship between the two countries where success in one sort of led to the success in the other. So for me, this is a really, successful contemporary case of transnational engagement. I want to go quickly to another case, another time, another type of immigrant. And this is Moroccan immigrants to Europe in the 1960s and 1970s. Unlike the highly skilled Silicon Valley Indian immigrants, these were illiterate rural peasants. They worked in deplorable conditions in the factory floors and mine shafts of largely France and Germany. Yet this group of laborers, and as I said, they were illiterate peasants, as one observer put it, collectively, They were one of the most important financiers of Moroccan national development initiatives. Their wages, though far less than their European counterparts, their wages helped bankroll the construction of Moroccan dams, irrigation systems, and other major industrial investments. In contrast to the Indian example, this outcome was as a result of the deliberate initiatives of the state-owned Moroccan bank, which created a unique array of what one may call socio-financial products. And for the sake of time, I won't go into talk about some of these. But what they did was attempted to bring these migrant remittances into the formal banking system, back into the formal banking system of Morocco. And remember, these were illiterate peasants. Even when they were home, they were not using the formal banking system. And as I said, the bank went beyond some of the conventional banking practices. And I'll just for the sake, for the sake of sort of giving flesh. I mean, some of the things what the bank did was to establish embassies. Establish branches in the embassies in Europe. And bank officials would actually go with the immigrants to the post office because the immigrants weren't using the formal networks because they were illiterate. So they would actually go to the post office with them to fill out the transfers. As I said, there are a whole slew of other things that the bank did, but I think I make the point. So today, 6.4 billion US of migrant remittances pass through the Moroccan banking system. It represents 20% of the total volume in the Moroccan banking system. It is the single most significant source of foreign currency that the currency receipts that the country receives. Why I chose these two examples? These two examples are really steeped in contrast. They're steeped in contrast in terms of the nature of the immigrant. Skilled immigrants or humble illiterate peasants. They are steeped in contrast in terms of the nature of the capital repatriated. The Indians repatriated largely their human capital. The Moroccans repatriated financial capital. They are steeped in contrast in terms of the intentionality of the immigrant to make a difference. But despite these contrasts, I've been able to draw a number of core principles that lead to economically impactful transnational engagement. And for the sake of time, I'll probably even talk only about two. The first is really to mobilize transnational engagement, or I should say to mobilize repatriated capital, whether it's human or financial, requires an entrepreneurial mindset. We saw that with the Indian IT workers. They needed to make opportunities for them back at home in India because most of them only had a 6-year US visa. So they needed to create opportunities back in India. We saw the entrepreneurial mindset again manifested by the Moroccan bank, as I said, by embarking in some very unconventional techniques, products, tools, practices to make it happen. And what do I mean by an entrepreneurial mindset? An entrepreneurial mindset effectively is a state of mind that orients one's activities to entrepreneurial activities and entrepreneurial outcomes. The question is, do we in the Trinidad diasporic community have that necessary entrepreneurial mindset? I think so. I think so because I think it is fairly typical for lay people to sort of confuse having an entrepreneurial mindset with being a business owner. But people who possess an entrepreneurial mindset are effectively people who dare to do something different, who dare to sort of tread the untreaded path, people who dare to take a risk in the hope of getting something better or in the hope of yielding something better, however that better is defined. I want to define what Donna De Carolis, who is a well-known dean of entrepreneurship of the school, the closed school of entrepreneurship. And I want to define how she defines entrepreneurship, which is kind of one of the most accepted definitions of entrepreneurship. She says, entrepreneurship is manifested as the choice you make to alter your life, to go through the pain of detaching yourself from what you usually do, and attempt a new course of action. It's the pain of choosing to be resilient in the face of adversity, the gut wisdom of taking a risk because you know you just can't do more of the same. This, to me, perfectly describes who we are as immigrants. Having detached ourselves from our native land and made lives here, and as the Consul General has said, successful lives here in Canada, I think entrepreneurs we all are. So the question is, do we have the necessary human and financial capital to repatriate, to make a difference? Because we may have the entrepreneurial mindset, and I think I have convinced you all that we have the entrepreneurial mindset. But if it is we are merely eking out a living, barely surviving, then we still aren't able to engage in transnational projects, transnational engagement that could be economically impactful to Trinidad and Tobago. It's a rhetorical question because the answer is no. And what convinced me that the answer is no is that I sort of got some results of a recent survey. I think it's a 2013 survey conducted by InfoDev, which is a global innovation program of the World Bank. And 4 results of the study I want to share with you. First of all, which we all know, number 1, they say the Caribbean is unique in that for every resident in the region, there's an individual living in the diaspora. So we are a sizable diaspora. Secondly, it says the Caribbean diaspora are typically well-educated, fairly affluent, with more than half having bachelor degrees and higher, and almost a quarter having investable wealth of more than 100,000 US. So we, I think, are robust, both in terms of human and financial capital. Thirdly, the report noted that 70% of the diaspora are formally and informally affiliated with organizations in home countries. Half of those surveyed sent remittances, and a full 85% give back to the Caribbean, either through financial help or other support in kind. And fourth, finally, certainly in terms of what I want to talk about, they noted that there's a gap between real engagement and expressed interest, and that gap is significant. So effectively what the report noted was 85% of diaspora members would be interested in investing in a business back home, but only 13% did. In short, when I read this, it suggested to me that we are sizable and engaged diaspora, well imbued with human and financial capital, and more critically, possessing a strong appetite to do more. But turning to the MPs speak that we are all Caribbeans, we are one people, my question is, to what extent these global Caribbean data are reflective of us as Trinidad? because we may be one people in a certain way, but are we one people as Caribbean people with respect to our habits of giving back? I have reason to believe that the answer to that question in terms of Trinidad and Tobago is no. And I will share with you some of the reasons why. Another, and in fact the most recent World Bank migration report showed that Trinidad and Tobago ranks 3rd in the world of countries suffering the greatest loss of tertiary educated nationals. 3rd in the world. A staggering 68% of tertiary educated, university educated Trinidadians and Tobagonians live outside of the country. We are only second to Guyana, 90%, Haiti, 75%. Closely following us in 4th place is Barbados, 66%, and Jamaica, 48%. In fact, if I remember, of the top 10 Caribbean countries were the top 5 in terms of, if you want to call it that, brain drain. We all know of the brain drain, okay? Yet in terms of remittances, remember we are 3rd in the world in terms of brain drain. In terms of financial remittances as a percentage of GDP, Trinidad did not even feature in the top 10, in the top 100. Wow. Haiti ranked 8th in the world. Guyana ranked 24th in the world. So to some extent you could say, okay, Haiti and Guyana, these governments are returning, are receiving some sort of financial return on their brainpower investment. One may argue that these statistics, because they're on a percentage of GDP, so one may argue, well, you know, Trinidad looks bad because our GDP is high. So when you compute remittances as a percentage of GDP, of course, with a high GDP, no. So I looked at the absolute figures. And again, Trinidad does not even rank in the top 10 of the region. I am not even going for the world, not even in the top 10 for the region. And I was staggered by the number that you gave of 150,000 just here in Ontario. So whilst we are top in the world with regards to highly skilled nationals living abroad, we still do not have the remittance habits of our neighbors. Currently, Jamaicans give back $2.3 billion annually to Jamaica in terms of remittances. Haitians give back $2.2 billion annually in terms of remittances. These figures dwarf what we give back. They are 20 times what we give back. Guyanese give back $326 million, which is almost 3 times what we give. Our remittances behavior is equal to Barbados. We give back, as Trinidadians, what Bajans, a smaller country, and I would think a country with a much smaller diasporic community, we give back in absolute terms just slightly more than what Barbadians give back. So I think I have a good reason to believe that we are not all one people in terms of remittance habits, right? I think that to the extent that the InfoDev statistics are not reflective, okay, it's not reflective of the Trinidad diaspora in general, and to the extent it's also not reflective of the Trinidad and Tobago diaspora here in Canada. I don't have this aggregated information. That is the extent to which our relationship with the Trinidad and Tobago representatives here is one based on our continued asking them for their support as opposed to the other way around. Then I think that we as a Trinidad and Tobago diasporic community need to make a serious rethink a serious change, a serious shift in our thinking, in our orientations, and in our practice. Because it means to me that we are woefully underperforming with regards to our fellow Caribbean diasporic communities here and elsewhere. And I think more critically, we are underperforming significantly way beyond our innate potential to give back. As they say here in Canada, we are punching way below our weight. So my call to action is, and I'm going to tie up now, my call to action, or in fact, this is a call to action, because we may be, I don't know. But if we aren't, and even if we are just not giving back enough. And my call to action, therefore, is for us to come together collectively with some ideas of giving back strategically. Let us draw on the inner entrepreneur in all of us to realize our repatriation potential and lead the way. Let's be bold about ourselves. Let's lead the way for other Trinidad and Tobago diasporic communities in the rest of Canada, North America, and indeed the rest of the world. So I think I will close here, and thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Welcome, welcome, one and all to the land of faith. Trinity to the bone, we go to the bone. When it comes to Bacana, yeah, they can't beat we at Trinity to the bone, we go to the bone. Sweet woman, parade abundantly, my brethren, they full of energy. Some people say God is a Trinity. And all convincing we God gave us a spirit fiery. Nothing in the world no bother we. Look at smart man gone with we money. We still come out and mash up the party. Sweet, sweet TNT. Hey. Oh, how I love up my country. Sweet, sweet TNT. Yeah. No place in this world I'd rather be. Sweet, sweet TNT. Oh, Lord, how I love up my country. Sweet, sweet TNT. No place in this world